Hey there, welcome in to episode 3 of the UP Power Podcast. Kevin McNulty and Keegan Cooper. Keegan, we have a lot to get to this week. High school sports, college sports, the rivalry is back this weekend, this time on the hardwood for the first time. NMU and Tech basketball going at it on Saturday, both men's and women's. And of course, the Detroit Lions playing in the NFC Championship game out in San Francisco for the first time. They'll be playing for the conference championship in 32 years. So we'll get to all of that, but first, you had a crazy week with your flat tires. You got rear-ended, cars in the shop. You're doing okay?
We're good now. Everything is good. You know, flat tires, a good reminder to make sure before you travel anywhere with the weather we have up here
Especially,
in the UP,
when it's this cold, right?
to check your tires. So 2 flat tires. Those are good. Those are replaced. Had a little rear end incident, but all good. Car's good too. Bumper is good to go. Getting replaced, so we're
all right,
back.
we're on the mend in terms of the Kia Sportage out in the parking lot. We'll start with the high school, get into the rivalry games coming up, and talk a little NMU and Tech hockey before talking about the Lions and also closing the book on the Packers season. So, UP basketball poll, week 3, not a whole lot of change.
Not a lot of change, and I didn't expect a lot of change. When you looked at the matchups
I
this
agree.
week,
Yeah.
Especially in the top 5, the top 5 teams weren't playing each other, so you don't probably expect a lot of change. They were playing other teams, and they all got wins this week.
Yeah, we did have some interesting matchups, especially in Divisions 1 through 3. Boys, let's go through that poll real quick. Iron Mountain still number 1, undefeated at 11-0. They will take on Negaunee tonight, Tuesday. So when you're listening to this, we will probably have a result of that game. But as of right now, we don't. Negaunee fell out of the poll this week. And behind Iron Mountain at number 2, it's Kingsford, tied with Marquette, who took down Menominee last Wednesday down at their place. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So Marquette's tied for second, Menominee at 4, so those two flip-flop. And then Jeffers still hanging around at number 5, 11-1 on the season, receiving votes, 9-3. Ishpeming also in action tonight against Gladstone. Let's start. So last Tuesday, we talked about this massive game that we had last Tuesday night, Iron Mountain, Kingsford. Great environment. Mountaineers barely pull it out in the end. What'd you see?
Yeah, no, a back-and-forth game, and I'm talking to both coaches before the game. They knew, Kingsford's head coach knew Oscar Kangas is going to get his points. But Iron Mountain also knew that Kingsford has the guys that are going to get their points. And in the end, it came down to who made plays, a couple free throws missed, and the Mountaineers get it done. The thing that was interesting to me, too, is there was no point in the game that it felt like either team really had control. Mm-hmm. It was back and forth every possession, up and down. Every foul mattered. Every loose ball mattered. And, it came down to the wire. Now, when these teams meet again, things could maybe go differently,
At Kingsford, when they meet again next month. It should be fun. I mean, you're right. Just going through the highlights when you got back and taking a look, it was back and forth, and nobody really pulled ahead, of course. For Kingsford, a great game from Gavin Grondin. I know he missed the 2 free throws at the end. Shouldn't be hanging his head. He played outstanding, and like we've mentioned, the Flivers will have another stab at the Mountaineers later on. So that was a great game. Iron Mountain came out on top. Great environment. The 50-50 split there at IM. You had blue, and then you had the black and gold over there. Just a fantastic game. Obviously, we love watching both of those teams play. Kingsford, Monday night, a big win at Menominee as well.
Yeah, 71-61, and I think it's the case of Kingsford got out and liked to run, and the transition offense was kind of a focal point of that win. Menominee hung close, and that one was close too. Free throws down the stretch. Kingsford made those, got a couple easy baskets, and ultimately kind of got the job done. But again, when these top 5 teams play each other, Kevin, it's you never know environment, and I think that's a big thing for high school basketball is you never know on any given night. It could be your night or somebody else's night.
That's true, and that's now 2 tough losses for Menominee in a week because last Wednesday Marquette went down there for a makeup game that was originally scheduled for 2 Fridays ago when we had the blizzard coming through. There was no traveling from Marquette to Menominee that day, but Marquette, the Sentinels, I don't know if we're there yet. I actually have to check on when we start calling them the Sentinels, but that's official. For now, Marquette goes down there, takes care of business. They're playing really good basketball. I'll tell you, a Menominee team that's really talented. They have great athletes top to bottom. You look at the roster, you look at their football roster that went to the state title game and was this close from a Division VII state championship. A lot of those guys are there. Your Trevor Turkoffs, your Landon Bardowskis, your Eli Beals, who you forget how tall Eli Beal is.
Yeah.
Obviously they make plays, but Marquette went in there and they handled business. They had a back-to-back because that game was rescheduled. Sault Ste. Marie comes to town, a team they beat by just 3 in December, and they handled the Blue Devils, 15, 20 points that final score was. So Marquette's playing really good basketball. Give Rich Ledo a lot of credit. When they took down Kingsford, that's when you knew, okay, they're probably pretty serious. Mm-hmm. And the talent and the shooting that they have is pretty remarkable when you look at what, watching them on Thursday, taking on Sault Ste. Marie at home. Kyler Sager couldn't miss in the first half.
No, he was.
If he got an open look, he was knocking it down. And, obviously, that's when Marquette is at its best. Jackson Jeremy run the point. They do a lot of things the right way in terms of getting good looks. And, of course, Jacob McPhee down low makes things a lot easier. You're also going to be at an interesting game tonight, Ishpeming hosting Gladstone. Gladstone not appearing on our poll this week, but a tough team. The Braves coming into Ishpeming. Yeah, no, definitely.
And when you look at both of those teams, it'll be an exciting one. I think one of those games where you never really know. At Ishpeming, so maybe the Hematites have they have the home court advantage. The fans will be there for them. But Gladstone, not a team to sleep on either. I expect Caden Luma, to have a big game, and as he has every game,
right.
But I expect him to kind of be a focal point today, and if he gets going, that kind of gets everybody else for the Hematites going.
We will see what happens. See if the Hematites can get their 10th win of the season. Let's take a look at Division IV. Even less movement in Division IV this week. St. Ignace still number 1 at 9-2. Pickford flips with Munising into the 2 spot. They're 9-1. The Mustangs at 10-3. They're in your 3 spot. Forest Park 8-2. Recovered nicely this week from those back-to-back losses without their head coach. So Forest Park stays at number 4, and Norway 9-3 at number 5. We got to look at Norway Friday night. Took care of business against Stevenson.
Yeah, no, these teams, like you said, Kevin, not a lot of movement. Didn't expect it to move that much. In this last third of the season, though, it's going to be exciting because I think this is where you see, okay, we played the first half of the season. Now we're in the final quarter. We've made all the adjustments we can. Can we go out every night and get plays? And make the plays to get the wins that we need. So when you get to the postseason, we're in a good spot.
Yeah, well, we'll see if teams like St. Ignace and Pickford and Munising, I would throw in that camp of Eastern UP teams that are really coming on and will be a threat in Division IV, no doubt about it. Not a whole lot to add there because a lot of these teams didn't play each other this week. Let's move on to girls and, of course, number 1, Negaunee Miners at 11-1 on the season. They're your number 1 team in Divisions 1 through 3. Sault Ste. Marie stays at number 2. They're 5-3. Bark River Harris is 9-1. Now they moved up from last week from the 5 spot. So now they are number 3 team in Divisions 1 through 3. I think we would both argue they should be number 2 behind Negaunee. And then they're followed by Houghton at 7-4, Gladstone 6-3, and Westwood and Calumet receive votes. We'll talk Bark River Harris, but Negaunee, Westwood, playing at Westwood on Friday night. Westwood's not a bad basketball team. You look at the final score, and you would think Westwood is a very bad basketball team. No, they're 5-4, and they have Megan Marta, who's going on to play for Casey Towson at Northern. Negaunee looked like one of the best teams in the state Friday night.
Yeah, they did, and I think that Ishpeming loss, Kevin, has energized the Negaunee Miners girls basketball team, and now they are playing wall-to-wall, as much energy as they can every night, and finding ways for everybody to score. You know, and you look at that Ishpeming game, Ella Mason still got her points, but
She was limited.
she was limited. So in these other, games down the stretch, our team's going to find a way to stop her or limit her or not. And in this case, they didn't. And then if she's going, everybody else is going to score the basketball as well.
Yeah, and I think for Ella, she's probably at this point as a senior, she's over the 1,000-point mark. She's a veteran. She's their leader. She's their top player, top scorer. She's going to encounter some teams like Ishpeming in March that will be able to, bring her down a notch and not make her the best player on the floor, which oftentimes she is. And talking to Ryan Riegel, he broke out the box and won, and, it worked pretty well.
Yeah,
just putting all the attention on Mason.
Yeah, putting all the attention on her and getting her off the ball. But no surprise to see Nagani still rolling. And like you said, that Westwood game, Westwood not a bad team, but I think the Miners have a goal in mind, and so they're not going to let anybody stand in their way.
They kicked it into high gear, and when Westwood was at Nagani earlier this season, it wasn't particularly close either. So beyond that, I don't think the teams match up that well. But Ella Mason, she got back on a roll this week. Gwyn came to town last Tuesday. I think she had 25 points in seemed like the first quarter. And then didn't play a lot in the second half, finishing with 28 on the night. So Nagani's back and rolling, and we have to talk about Bark River. Friday night, how about that? Nina Bowers with the buzzer beater, 66-63. They take down Escanaba, and the Broncos, man, if they can win games like that, they're looking really good at 9-1.
Yeah, I think that's a moment Nina Bauer's never going to forget.
Oh, no.
Game winner.
You can't.
Game winner against, a competitive team down the stretch, and to make a shot like that, man, that's got to be a good moment for the Broncos. And 9-1.
Pretty remarkable. And like we said, in our humble opinion, should have moved up to that number 2 spot. No disrespect to Sault Ste. Marie, but Bark River is playing some terrific basketball right now. And Houghton and Gladstone lurking, like I said, Westwood and Calumet receiving votes. In Division 4, not a whole lot of change either. Ishpeming 9-0, they're your number 1 team. They are the only team to take down the Nagani Miners this season. Now, Lakeland and Hubble will jump St. Ignace this week. The Lakes are 11-0. St. Ignace standing at 9-3. They are your 3rd team in the poll. Ironwood at 10-2 at number 4. Baraga and Munising tied for 5th. Vikings at 8-3. Mustangs at 9-1. But Ishpeming, you watched them play last night against Iron Mountain. Mountaineers a little bit outmatched.
Yeah, I think Ishpeming is, and credit to head coach Ryan Riegel and what he's done with the program and his team. But when you have...
You think about how young they are. I'm going to keep talking about that because while they have the vets like Mackey, they also have Maya Hemmer, who's a sophomore. And also a team leader and huge contributor, perhaps their most talented player.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have Jenna Mackey, the veteran. You've got Janessa Eagle. You got Maya Hemmer. I mean, you've got these prolific scorers that can just put the ball in the basket, and you couple that with the intense defense that they play. Lainey Corpy, I gotta shout her out.
Yeah.
Playing some intense defense, and head coach Ryan Riegel getting fired up when she gets those 10-second violation calls because they're picking you up as soon as you inbound the ball.
Absolutely,
and they're playing you full court.
Nagani will do it too. Yeah, that's why those two teams are fun to watch because both those coaches really turn it on for their teams because they know, well, we can go score, but let's create turnovers. Let's get more possessions, and obviously that yields results for those two teams. Lakeland and Hubble at 2, they are 11-0. They're playing terrific basketball. Emily Jokla seems like she drops 30 every other game.
Yeah, a walking bucket, we might say. And if she shoots it, it's probably going in.
Yeah.
And keep doing that. Keep scoring the basketball.
Should mention in Division 4 as well, Ewan Trout Creek and Kearney Nadeau receiving votes in the D4 poll. And Baraga sitting at number 5 for the second straight week. Baraga and Munising tied for 5th. That did not change, but I just keep saying, keep an eye on the Vikings.
Keep an eye on the Vikings.
They might be 8-3 right now, but that's the same team that went all the way down to East Lansing last year in D4.
Yeah, no, and it's still some time left to bump in the rankings, and yeah.
We're working on about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I heard, and we're going to transition to college basketball here in a moment, but I heard Sam Clayton say in her press conference today, yeah, we got 10 league games left, and I was like, what?
Yeah, the time is
Where did it go?
Time is flying for basketball, but I guess putting a wrap on the poll, not much movement.
No.
But some teams to watch here in the last couple weeks of the regular season.
Absolutely. A lot of talented teams will be out there for most of it, thankfully. And, yeah, it's shaping up to be a fun month of March. And we'll keep saying that until March is here and it delivers, like I know it will once again. Briefly on high school hockey, Houghton with the shocker they're still undefeated because they tied on Saturday, but they still don't have a loss. It was a tie to Northville on Saturday. I wouldn't worry about the Gremlins. I think one tie on the record, they're going to be okay.
Yeah, they're going to be all right.
And, of course, we'll keep looking forward to that game against Marquette on February 13th. Marquette riding a 14-game winning streak, 8-zip. They beat Negaunee last Tuesday night. So Marquette rolling on the ice, Houghton doing the same. I mean, the tie on Saturday was coming off 8-zip Mercy Rule win over Granville Friday night, where they scored 5 times in the first period, and Mikey Millette had 5 points in the game. Him and Raffaele were really on one Friday night. When that came in, I was like, oh, it's all 2 guys, and they had 5 goals in the first period. So Houghton looked great Friday night. Didn't get a chance to see what happened on Saturday, but like we said, I don't think there's cause for concern.
You can one tie, they'll be all right.
And like I said, still 0 in the middle of their record. No losses on the season still for Houghton. All right, rivalry week is here again. It's been a little over a month since our last rivalry meetup. I'm not counting the hockey exhibition. I'm going back to December 9th when the Huskies and Wildcats met at the Berry. But now, back at the Berry this Saturday, men's and women's basketball will get together. Let's start on the women's side. And Northern has the opportunity to do something they haven't done in quite a while on Saturday.
Yeah, so, Northern has not beaten the Huskies since January of 2017.
Yeah.
They are 6-33 since 2006 against the Huskies. And, an opportunity for the Wildcats and head coach Casey Thousand to get her first win.
She's never beaten Tech. Sam Clayton's been the head coach at Tech since 2018. She's never lost to Northern.
Yeah, so a lot of storylines kind of coming together for this game, and I think it's a case of, for the Northern Michigan Wildcats, McKaylee Kuhn going to be able to score and get her points. J.C. Weisbrod, 2 career highs.
She might, if you're talking X factors in the women's game on Saturday, tips off at 1 o'clock at the Berry. Keegan will have highlights Saturday night. Should be a lot of fun. So that is game number 1 on Saturday. Of course, it's a doubleheader with the men's game to follow. But, yeah, if we're talking X factors, I think J.C. Weisbrod's right up there. 2 career highs in points just in this past week.
Yeah, a huge boost for the Wildcats to have, just somebody who 5 threes in one of those games. I think 6 in the other games. So, just to have somebody that's, okay, we can go score a quick 20 points here and extend our lead like that. I think also another X factor, Sarah Newcomer has been pouring in some baskets this season for the Wildcats. So can she contribute a little bit? Is their inside game going to be limited because of the height and strength that the Huskies have? Isabella Linz on the Huskies side, expect her to have a big game.
Sure thing,
for her to score. Got to get her going offensively. It's going to be a battle.
Yeah, and if you're looking at keys for Michigan Tech coming into this one at 8-8 on the season, Wildcats at 12-5, 2 straight wins on the road this past weekend over Parkside and Purdue Northwest. The Huskies split with those two teams. My big key for Tech is they got to find a way to score the basketball.
Yeah.
And I don't know who that's going to be, but you look at their loss to Parkside on Thursday, they put up 41 points. Mm-hmm. So that's really been their issue, is scoring the basketball. And who do they turn to when they're in a tight game down the stretch? Is it Sarah Dax that's going to put in the bucket for them? That's what Tech needs to figure out, in my opinion. It's on the offensive end. I trust them to handle Michaela Kuhn and J.C. Weisbrod for the most part, because you've seen Sam Clayton coach teams be able to win when Kuhn scores 25 and, of course, be able to win when Kuhn scores 5. Yeah. And just talking to Sam today, she knows exactly what to expect from Kuhn and how she's going to go get her bread on Saturday. She's been doing it since she's a freshman, and it's her 5th year. So Sam Clayton's seen plenty of Michaela Kuhn, and on top of Kuhn now being NMU's all-time leading scorer, and I mentioned that when she reached that mark, she came back for milestones like that, and also maybe big moments like beating Tech for the first time in her career. That would be a big moment for Michaela.
Yeah, no, it would be a huge, huge moment. And you talk about defense, and we look at Northern Michigan and what they did this past weekend, sinking that guard, way deep.
Yeah.
And just basically saying, hey, we're going to leave you open. So if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us from the outside. And an interesting strategy, but it worked. It worked. And I think you could see something similar like that on Saturday when they play Michigan Tech and they get, maybe a big or a forward out there that doesn't shoot the 3 ball that well. Sink that guard in, limit the inside presence, and make them beat you from the outside. Now, Michigan Tech has shooters. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
They've got some gals on the team that can shoot the basketball, so maybe that might not work. But for the Wildcats, an interesting strategy. It paid off. They limited the inside presence for both Parkside and Purdue Northwest and came away, with wins.
Yeah, it's the consistency that the Huskies are looking for. On the offensive end, we'll see if they can find it. I'd be shocked if this one isn't close, within 10 points, say, by the end of it when we take a look at the final score. And we'll, of course, recap that game on next week's edition of UP Power, along with the men's game. Ooh. And we have to start with Northern because they've won 11 games in a row.
11.
And they're doing it a lot by very slim margins.
Yeah, you look at these last 4 or 5 games, less than 10 points, some even less than 5 points. They just beat Parkside by 3. They beat Purdue Northwest by 4. And, when you talk to head coach Matt Mackerzak, they may not be playing their best basketball, but it's a saying that I've heard around Northern Michigan, and all coaches have said it once or twice, finding a way to win. Finding a way that if they're not playing their best basketball or shots are not falling, they do other things to get the job done. And you look at that in these last 4 games and kind of this last stretch, maybe shots aren't falling, they're still getting the job done. And we talk about X factors. Max Weisbrod,
GLIAC Offensive Player of the Week for the 2nd straight week.
Averaging 21.5.
Well deserved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weisbrod's been unbelievable, and I'm going to pause you on that point because while the Cats find ways to win in close games, the Huskies have been struggling in that department. You look at when they had Ferris State on the ropes last weekend in Houghton, and they let that one slip away, and Josh Bittner was kicking himself for just letting him go at the last 4 seconds, and nothing worked out. They lose by 1 point to one of the top dogs in the conference in Ferris State, I would say. Northern is the other top dog in the conference. So the Huskies have struggled in that department. Now, they did get a win on the road at Parkside, a 7-point win over the Rangers last Thursday, and I think that was a big confidence boost because they have struggled on the road pretty much the past 2-3 seasons if you look at the whole body of work. So getting that win on the road last week was needed, and now not a long road trip, but they are going to be on the road in Marquette this Saturday. So maybe the Huskies come in with a little bit of spunk to them and say, why can't we beat this Northern team that we saw 3 times last year, and we're just right there.
Yeah. I mean, and saw them in the GLIAC Championship, and when you look at that team, you think, wow, this is one of the top teams in the GLIAC. They made it to the GLIAC Championship. Keys for them, I think. Marcus Tomaszek has got to score, obviously.
Well, he's going to.
But they've got to find 1 or 2 other guys to chip in 8 or 10 points to kind of take the focus off of Tomaszek, because the Wildcats are going to come in.
And we talked about this last week, about the balance in their scoring, and Dan Goresker's stepped up a little bit. I mean, he's probably number 2 in terms of a pure scorer that they have on the floor at any given time. But you look at the Wildcats, and obviously they're a stronger team right now. They're further ahead than Michigan Tech is. They can score 1 through 5. When you look at Brian Parzik, going to the hoop, and if he puts up 10 shots, he's probably going to have 10 points.
Yeah.
Weisbrod, obviously. Dylan Keel, obviously, is that inside presence. Josh Bittner talked about making him, put up fadeaways, turnarounds, as opposed to dunks.
Yeah.
So that would be a win for Michigan Tech if they're able to limit Keel a little bit and maybe force them to shoot more threes. Obviously, the Cats have been really good in that department as well. So there's that's the thing with Northern Michigan right now, is you don't really know who it's going to come from. It has been Weisbrod recently, but, what if the Huskies aren't able to do what Bittner wants them to do in terms of making Keel get 8 to 10 feet from the basket and disrupt him a little bit? If that doesn't happen, Tech might struggle.
Yeah, no, they could. And I'm curious to see the pace of play, too, of the game. Is this going to be and really for both games, for men's and women's, is the women's game going to be up and down? Is it going to be more of a half-court set style? Are the Wildcats want to get out and run in transition? They shoot the ball very well in transition. Or are the Huskies going to try to slow them down and make them get in a half-court set and beat them that way?
Should be fun on Saturday.
Should be fun. It should be wild. Excited to be.
And then just a few more weeks before we get those games up in Houghton. So it'll be fun. And obviously, go ahead and tune in on Fox UP to those games, 1 and 3 o'clock from the Berry. Should be fun. We'll see what happens. A lot on the line. We talked about a bunch of storylines with Casey Towson never beating the Huskies, and Sam Clayton never losing to Northern, and obviously the Wildcat men's team coming in on this big win streak, and Michigan Tech still trying to figure things out. But look at the game they played against Ferris, who's a really good team, and they were this close. So we don't know what's going to happen. Should be fun. We'll recap all of it here on UP Power next week. Time to talk hockey. I'll start with Tech hockey. Talking to Joe Sean this morning. I think it was a positive weekend for Michigan Tech. One, they only allowed 3 goals on the weekend.
Yeah, huge.
The lowest number on the season. On Friday, when they get the 2-1 win, a come-from-behind win, they hadn't allowed less than 2 goals all year. So Blake Pietila, struggled a little bit at the beginning. Struggled for Blake Pietila.
Yeah.
But he's really come into his own at this point, and Joe said it on Friday, and I agree with it. Blake's Blake. You know what you're going to get. It's that decor and Chase Pietila that he was out there almost every shift on Friday. He was logging all the minutes and didn't really look tired at all. I think they put pieces together. They end up with the tie on Saturday, losing the shootout so they don't get the extra point. But it's a 4-point weekend for the Huskies. I think they'll take that over a team ahead of them in the standings, especially coming off of 2 losses at St. Thomas.
Yeah.
Because that hurt. They get Arvid Kaderoff back. He's got a C on his sweater. That means a lot. And talking to Joe about it today, he said his daughter that doesn't watch every minute of every game, but was there on Friday, and it's like, you guys play a lot better when Arvid's out there. And so she knows, everyone knows, if you've watched Tech play at all this year, they are a lot better with Arvid Kaderoff out there. So that was the case this week. Isaac Gordon's over 20 points on the year. He's the first Husky to reach that mark as a freshman. He's been outstanding.
Yeah, huge goal, huge assist on Saturday. And the Huskies make that comeback late to get the tie and force the shootout. And 4 points on the weekend, Kevin, you take that because, and we've talked about this here on UP Power before, you can't go into the second half of the season and come away with nothing. You have to get at least 4 points on the weekend.
And that's what the Huskies managed to do with Bemidji coming in. And everyone in the CCHA is still bunched up
Right there, right here.
at the top. Tech slid a little bit after their bad weekend against St. Thomas. Northern is behind the pack a little bit. Just based on the results the past 2 weekends against Lake State. And then against St. Thomas, just not quite where they need to be to make up that ground. But before we move on to Northern, Tech will go to Sault Ste. Marie on Friday to take on Lake State. And they are a weird hockey team that no one can figure out because they're at home 2 weekends ago, sweep the Cats, take the Capo Cup, really steal it from them.
Steal them, yeah.
Right?
Steal it,
because it was Northern's for the keeping.
Yeah.
And it was stolen from them by the Lakers. And then the Lakers go down to last place Ferris State and get swept. A notorious hard place to play, but talking to Joe about it today, he's like, I've been impressed overall by them, especially going to play in their building. Of course, that's where they swept Northern. They went on the road and got swept. So the Lakers, a weird team right now, but I think vulnerable enough for Tech to go in there and have a great weekend.
Yep. I think that Tech should look to come away with 6 points on the weekend.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. Now the Lakers, you can't count them out.
Well, because that would also be huge.
Yeah.
Lake State slid ahead of Tech in the standings after their sweep at Northern when Tech was also swept on the road at St. Thomas. So they need these, and I think, Joe didn't say it, but he would admit they're a little bit vulnerable based on what we saw this past weekend, dropping those 2 games at Ferris.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll see. Now, I was at the Berry Friday night for Northern's win over St. Thomas, a much-needed win, and they looked good doing it. Everything, was pretty clean. Grant Petolny said he was very encouraged that when the Tommies tied it up late in the second period, it was a goal that he thought shouldn't have counted. Wanted a high sticking on St. Thomas player, I forget who it was, that had his stick up here and deflected it in. Probably high sticking, I would agree.
Yeah.
I asked Grant, and he said it was inconclusive afterwards. But they come out in the third, get the game-winning goal. Gustafson Nyberg, great. We just beat St. Thomas, one of the best teams in the conference. Let's go do it again on Saturday. And no.
And I was there on Saturday, and it was like they were playing slow, I guess. It was like it was like the day before it didn't even happen. And definitely St. Thomas came out with some more fire, right? They lose one on the road against the team that they're above in the conference standings right now.
And it was also a game that the Tommies thought they should have had.
Yeah.
Based on it was tied 2-2 heading into the third, and even after Northern went ahead, they were firing shot after shot after shot. It was 3 minutes of empty net. Wildcats didn't get an empty netter. So the pressure was on, and that's why if you look at the box score from Friday, you'll see shots ended up being pretty even. That was because St. Thomas kept putting the pressure on, and they came in on Saturday and they took care of business.
Yeah, they took care of business too, and I think talking to Grant Petolny after that game and even today, and talking about it, Northern has to find a way to score goals, right? Consistently too. One night putting up 2 or 3 or 4 even. That's great, but you got to find a way to do it consistently. Defensively, they weren't bad. When you look at the goals that were scored, hats off to St. Thomas. Some pretty phenomenal shots, and the movement of the puck was there. But you got to find a way to score a goal. You can't win consistently scoring 1 goal or 2 goals a game.
Yeah,
against teams in the CCHA, you just can't do it.
That's kind of been the reality for the Cats of late. The 2 losses at Lake State 1 goal on Friday, 2 goals on Saturday. They let up 5 in each.
Yeah.
Not going to cut it, and I know Grant Patolny was upset Saturday after the game because, they let that one go. They just didn't take advantage of the opportunities they were given.
It's also, too, the goalie, I wouldn't say battle. It's not a battle. They're on the same team. But who is going to be the guy that consistently is in the net? They've started with Benny, then they went to Charlie, then back to Benny. We saw Benny this weekend when they played, St. Thomas. Looked pretty good. Mm-hmm. But, again, you gotta help your goalie out. You got to score goals, too. You got to help him out, right?
That's true. Ask Blake Pietolo,
Yeah, I mean, and you look at Michigan Tech, too. You got to score goals for your goalie, right? Goalies are there, yes, for saves, and they'll save a lot of them. They can't save everything.
Sometimes 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Northern on the road at Minnesota State in Mankato this weekend.
Tough place to play.
It's going to be hard.
It's going to be tough, but got to come away with points this weekend.
Yeah, I would agree. If they get swept,
that hurts them.
You can kind of phone it in. Yeah. And I hate to say that before we're even into February, but the following weekend is Tech.
Yeah.
So you're home and home again.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Both teams need a couple of wins, sit in the middle of the pack in the CCHA. We will see what happens, like I said. Let's talk some NFL. It's really late in the year for us in the UP
to be talking about
the NFL, especially the Detroit Lions. But let's close the book on the Packers season first. Saturday night, San Francisco, rainy, wet. Brock Purdy does not play well in the rain. We found out he was drying his hand off as he was dropping back. That was a tough look for Brock. And the Packers had them exactly where they wanted them. And it just slipped away. Finally, Purdy puts together a drive when it mattered most. Yep. Niners go up, and Jordan Love ends up throwing a pick in a really bad situation in what was a really bad throw because he could have thrown it away. There was still time on the clock. And then, of course, Anders Carlson is also an issue, missing the field goal at the end of the game as well. So here's where I stand on it, and there's two ways to look at their season, their playoff run. I agree with both. The first one is this was a rebuilding year. We went to the divisional round, and we're so close to the NFC Championship, but, man, we have a lot to build off of, and Jordan Love appears to be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFC already after 1 year as a starter.
Yep.
That's true. That's true,
yeah.
At the same time, you were so close to knocking off the 1 seed and going to take on the Lions for the third time this year at Ford Field in the championship game. It's just they were so close, and they should have had that game. Their youth and inexperience finally showed in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I think too the two things, and you've already mentioned them, that people are going to remember: Anders Carlson missing the field goal, and Jordan Love throwing that interception. And I think you can equate that to the youngness of the team. I mean, you are looking at one of the youngest teams, if not the youngest team in the NFL right now.
Right.
And the inexperience showed. Now, Jordan Love, he is the Packers franchise quarterback. I believe that he's going to be there for many years to come, and expect the Packers to be back.
For sure.
And it was, it was a rebuilding year. No one expected them to go. They snuck into the playoffs. They did the unthinkable in the first round, winning the wild card, the only 7 seed in NFL history to win. The wild card.
You can't take away that Cowboys game.
No, you can't.
Everything that worked.
And it's almost, written in history. Like, come on, Dallas. Because no one saw that coming. If you're a Packers fan, though, you've got to be happy. You've got to be ready to look forward to the next season. They did a lot of good things here. Jordan Love got a lot of experience. They got to the playoffs. They beat Dallas. I just think that's funny. That they beat Dallas because you didn't expect that.
You can always count on the Cowboys to lose before the NFC Championship game because they haven't been to one in almost 30 years, which is wild because they're so often in the playoffs, but they don't like to win playoff games. Yeah, I think that's all true, like I said. But there's the piece of me that says
they should have been in the
you
NFC
had
Championship
San
game.
Francisco on the ropes.
Yeah.
And Anders Carlson did not come through. I forget how long that field goal was. It was in the 40s. Any NFL kicker in 2024 should be hitting inside 50. He didn't, and the quote from Matt LaFleur that came from Tom McNulty during the game, which was very interesting to hear a coach say that whenever we send him out there, I just pray.
Yeah.
That's not a good look for your kicker.
Yeah.
You think John Harbaugh says a prayer when he sends Justin Tucker out there to kick?
Yeah, no.
No, he sends Justin Tucker out there to kick when he knows there's a 99% chance he's going to make it.
No. Yeah, and for Anders Carlson, you need to make them. So, you got to make those if you're in the NFL and in those big games. And,
yeah.
You got to make them. Jordan Love, don't throw that football. Throw it away. Throw it out of bounds. Throw it to a fan. I don't care. But don't throw it downfield.
Yeah, so that would have made it a 7-point ball game. It was a 41-yard field goal.
Yeah.
And then you look at the next night, and Jake Bass in Buffalo missing the 43-yard. Elements a factor in both the games.
Yeah.
But Carlson, they might have to address the kicker situation. It just depends if Brian Gutekunst and LaFleur will have patience, or they think it's the right move to go nab the best available kicker. But that's something they'll have to address during the offseason. The other thing is, what do you do with Joe Barry, now the defensive coordinator, after the last 4 or 5 games of the season, where he came through, held Chicago to 9 points in the season finale to get them in the playoffs, and then Dallas, Dak looks like he walked in off the street and had never played quarterback in the NFL before.
Yeah.
And then what they did to Brock Purdy. I don't know what they do there with Joe Barry. He's been there for a while. Can you blame it on the youth and inexperience of the defense? Because that's also true.
Yep.
Gutekunst also traded Rasul Douglas when they were playing their worst football of the season before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
So you shipped out one of your top defensive backs. And Jair Alexander's the vet of the group, Darnell Savage too. Alexander, case in point, you never know what to expect from him because, he's kind of a character.
Yeah. And there's a lot of questions to be answered here in the offseason for the Packers.
And Lucas Van Ness didn't exactly have a first-round pick caliber season, so
exactly.
What is if Joe Barry's sticking around, what's his plan to elevate him that he's, say, Aiden Hutchinson next year, or something along those lines where he's a big factor whenever your defense is on the field. So, tough one to swallow for the Packers. Jordan Love shouldn't have thrown that ball.
Anders Carlson should have made that kick.
Anders Carlson should have made that kick. At the same time, if he made that kick and Love still threw that interception, it's not a – San Francisco has like 15 yards to go to get a field goal. Which probably would have happened.
So you lose 27-24.
So, and LaFleur said that after the game, that was with a couple minutes left in the game, 3 minutes left in the game, when Carlson misses the kick. You can't say confidently, just like with Bass for Buffalo, there's still a minute and a half left on the clock for Patrick Mahomes to move his team into field goal range. That was probably going to happen.
Yeah.
Just like if Carlson made the kick for the Pack, 49ers would have tied it, and then if they still picked off Love, would have had, like I said, 15, 20 yards to go to win the game on a field goal. Anyway, 49ers 24, Packers 21. That's the season for Green Bay. Obviously, a lot of positives like we discussed, but season is over. San Francisco is moving on to the NFC Championship game against the Detroit Lions at home. So the Bay Area, very excited to get out there this week and see what it's like. Who did I ask in the locker room on Sunday after the game, taking the show on the road? Because obviously Ford Field in Detroit has been a spectacle that's captivated the country. And I said it last week. I think people were like, okay, it's still a line. It's just a wild card playoff game. You can say it for sure now. Everyone is tuned in to what's going on in Detroit. And a lot of people around the country whose teams are out, the 28 other fan bases, are pulling for the Lions.
49.1 million viewers on the game, Kevin.
Crazy.
49.1 million viewers. And maybe they're all Detroit
And
Lions.
every television in Michigan, I think.
I mean, if you're not watching them, you're not doing
It's just really fun, driving back here to Marquette and just seeing so many signs that are grit and go Lions, and you just feel it.
Dan Campbell's my hero,
Yeah, and there's been a lot of people standing on soapboxes about, what just a good football team does to the city of Detroit, which I think is true.
Yeah.
Because while there's been a lot of hard times for the football team in Detroit, there's been a lot of hard times for the city of Detroit. So it's just really, really, really exciting. Well, let's get into the Bucs game a little bit. Jared Goff. There was no turn. They showed up so prepared, and it's every week at this point that they know, and Dan Campbell knows, they're going to be in a close game in the playoffs. Like, sure, every team knows that, but they play like they know.
No. Yeah.
It doesn't matter until the last 5 minutes of the game, because these teams are so evenly matched that we're going to be neck and neck. It's going to be within a touchdown, and you have to do the right thing at the right time. So the first half was kind of the opposite of what we saw in the wild card round. Matt Stafford, Jared Goff just chucking down the field, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not really any of that in the first half. It was tied 10-10 going into the second half. And then Goff started cooking a little bit.
Cooking.
And you see some of those guys, and Jahmyr Gibbs, 31 yards. That run was huge. And that might have been the loudest that it got in Ford Field, I would say, because that's one of those plays where, even if it's Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the most talented backs in the league, you don't expect him to rip off a 31-yard touchdown. So it was kind of that unexpected factor that the crowd just erupted, and it was such a huge play. And, the Lions offense started cooking there in the second half, and that was what Detroit needed.
Detroit did need that, and Tampa Bay, just
deserves a lot of credit.
Deserves a lot of credit for playing. Yeah.
I think Baker, and even right up until the very end, they had a chance to go down and tie the game. Mm-hmm. They needed a 2-point conversion because people were dunking on Todd Bowles for going for 2 down 8. I like that move.
Yeah.
I like that move because you're more likely to get it twice. Anyway, didn't matter because Derek Barnes picked off Baker.
And what an interception. When you watch that back and you watch the replay and you watch it in slow motion, not an easy ball to catch, and he goes up and comes down with it, and then that's, Jared Goff takes a knee, and that's caps off the game.
Second interception of the game, and from a guy, we talked about this on Sunday, a guy you don't really expect to make plays like that, but boom. Dan Campbell said after the game, he's like, we drafted him and we believed in him. And that's just every guy on the roster, 1 through 53, Dan Campbell and his whole staff believe in all of those guys.
Yeah.
You could be the guy that, is in the game 3 times on special teams. They believe that they can play football when it matters. And, Baker with 2 interceptions in the game. The first one, a more likely candidate to come up with an interception, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. How about that? How awesome was that, flipping it back to Baker? And look, I'm not going to defend Gardner-Johnson for taking shots at Baker Mayfield last week because I don't know. Maybe it was all in his plan to come up with an interception and flip it back to him and dunk on him. But it felt strange to me when CJ went after Baker last week. I mean, after the year Baker had, he proved that he was a solid starting quarterback in the league. He won a playoff game. And then the first possession of the game. He picks him off, and I'm like,
and hands it back to him.
He was right, you know. Talk your crap.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that competitiveness in the NFL, and I think you've got to be able to, take it on the chin and then, do something about it, And Baker Mayfield had a phenomenal season. He's, again, probably one of the top quarterbacks.
He threw for 349.
Yeah.
He played pretty well in the game. And I'll say one more thing about Ford Field, and then we can move on to the NFC Championship game and preview that for a couple minutes before we go. It was incredible the past 2 weeks, and I think, talking to other members of the media, it took a step up for the divisional round, which you would hope, right? Mm-hmm. A little bit. Even the wild card game and Stafford and everyone in there 45 minutes before kickoff because it was so cold outside, and it was the first playoff game in there in 30 years.
Yeah.
They took all that energy and just exponential growth for Lions fans out there. Everyone in there paid an arm and a leg to get a ticket. And, they let loose. It was pretty cool. And I asked Iffy in the locker room after the game, that's who it was, about, leaving that environment and going on the road. Taking the show on the road is how I put it. And he's like, our fans travel. So, he's just banking on the Honolulu Blue showing up in Santa Clara on Sunday. We'll be good. That was a theme throughout the season, that Lions fans were everywhere because they hadn't had a season like this in so long. Why wouldn't you take a trip to L.A. to watch them play the Chargers, or wherever, Tampa earlier in the season?
Yeah.
They were all over, and when I was Lions at Packers in September, tons of Lions fans. So that's a good point. NFC Championship is a little bit more expensive, I think. We'll see. But we'll see how many Lions fans are out there.
The 49ers
But if he seemed pretty confident that, no, we'll still have home field advantage, I was like, okay. Okay.
Yeah, Santa Clara, the 49ers could be getting introduced to the masses in Honolulu Blue, and I wouldn't expect anything less. Kevin, it's been 32 years. And for your dedicated...
Well, much longer. I think the single stat that blows my mind more than any is from 1958 to 2022, the Lions had one playoff win, divisional round in 1991. They have two in 2023. Ooh. That's the one that really puts it in perspective. It's like they won a couple of the NFL championships in the 50s, and before that, they were winning. But from 58, so the last 10 years of the NFL championship, essentially, then the entire Super Bowl era to this point, that's 58 years.
Ugh.
Nothing.
That hurts.
One win in 1991.
That hurts.
When Barry Sanders was a young buck, and they thought they were going back, and they never got there again. And now this year they've won two in a row, and it's just they're playing with house money. This San Francisco team lost in this round last year, and they feel like they should be in the Super Bowl every year. They made it to the Super Bowl a couple years ago and lost to Mahomes. They feel like they have all the pressure because they do.
They do, yeah.
And the Lions are going in there like, whatever. We'll just take care of business. Yeah. Grit all over our hats, on our arm. Some guy probably has a tattoo somewhere of that grit in the Honolulu Blue because they should, man. They deserve it. And, I think I said it last week. Why not keep winning?
Why not keep winning?
Even if you look at the AFC side, of course, Kansas City's in the AFC Championship for the sixth straight year. It's their expectation to be in the Super Bowl.
Since Patrick Mahomes has been the starter, he hasn't missed the AFC Championship, which is
that's wild. And then you have Baltimore, where just like Buffalo a little bit, it feels like their year because Kansas City, at least during the regular season, two playoff games, they look like Kansas City.
Yeah.
But it feels like Baltimore has a lot of pressure on them. Kansas City obviously always has a lot of pressure on them because the expectation now is when you have 15, you win Lombardis. And I just took you through San Francisco and the pressure that's on them. the Lions are just there.
Yeah, they don't.
And they could easily win on Sunday, and that's the coolest part of it.
Yeah, and I mean,
when I said playing with house money, they really are. They
got nothing to worry about. Really.
Yeah,
if they win, it's amazing, and everyone's happy. And if they lose, everyone's still probably really happy.
And that was my point. It's like that's like the outside view, but everyone in that locker room, top to bottom, look at Frank Ragnow. Sprained knee, sprained ankle. One before the game, one during the game. He just pops right up.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say pops right up. He looked immobile on the turf for a couple minutes, and then, I said to Seth Wells, I was like, because they made a couple injury announcements, and they were both Tampa. I was like, have we heard about Ragnow? He's like, nope, he's out there. and that's just the kind of dude he is, and they have so many dudes like that.
Yeah, and it just goes to show that they really care about playing and winning and being out there and doing everything they can.
There's a belief.
Yeah.
Looking at Hutch in the locker room on Sunday too, you could see the unfinished business look in his eye. He was walking over to talk to the media, and he was like, okay, let's do this because I'm not celebrating.
Yeah,
we got another game to win. So the outsider's point of view, house money, the Lions, nothing to lose, whatever. Everyone in that locker room believes they should go to San Francisco and win the NFC and go to Las Vegas. And I would not be surprised if it happens.
Yeah.
49ers, we broke down their last game because it was against Green Bay. They didn't look good. Brock Purdy looked really bad. For most of the game, he did come through when it mattered. Of course, Deebo Samuel got hurt. His shoulder. If he doesn't play, Brock Purdy is not as good.
No, he's not as good. And it could be that could be the tipping point.
We're going to find out. It's going to be a great Sunday, championship Sunday in the NFL, and the Detroit Lions are a part of it for only the second time ever in the Super Bowl era. I will be out there with the coverage for TV6. Very, very, very excited to bring that to all of you. For now, we'll pause the Lions talk, and there will be plenty more to get through as we move through the week. Take a look at the Lions injury report. They got out of there. They're obviously banged up, but nothing that might keep key players off the field. So we will monitor that and keep talking Lions. As long as the party goes on. That'll do it for this edition of the UP Power Podcast. Keegan Cooper, Kevin McNulty. We'll be back next week to go through all of it one more time. Thanks for joining us.